While ruminating on this idea, I had another kid. And one day while I was on maternity leave with her, I came downstairs and I told my husband, I was like, I think I want to start a dried pasta business. I still can't find what I want. And he said, what do you know about making and drying pasta? I said, absolutely nothing. He's like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. You should do that then. And here I am almost 7 years later.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rishi Katz, and welcome to The Oval Table, where we discuss all things related to helping those who live and work within your business how to survive, thrive, avoid pitfalls, have more fun, and become successful faster. Getting advice and input from someone outside of your business can make a big difference, and that's what we seek to do for you each and every week. Here at The Oval Table, we believe that every voice matters, and we want to model how that works. Often the advice that makes the difference comes from where you least expect it. We seek every week to provide a lens for a different way to do business. So much more is possible when everyone's ideas make it to the table. Let me introduce you to our co-hosts, Vaughn Johnson, Doug Bowers, and Carl Walsh. What do you guys have for our listeners this week?
Well, if you've been listening to the news and paying attention at all to what's going on in the world, there's an awful lot going out there, and it affects all of us as business leaders and as consumers. And today, we're going to discuss some of the more important ones coming up on our radar.
Competitive strategies for small business can entail a variety of things: marketing, sales, advertising, etc. But today we want to focus on product and price as a strategy. What's your product and what the price should be for that product in order to attract customers? Doug, what's your thought on product and price?
Well, although there are a variety of approaches within an existing business, there are certainly a variety of approaches within a market. It's very helpful to sit around the Oval Table and discuss what your strategies are, what your competitive strategies are, so that everyone around the table has a clear idea of what you're trying to do. And to simplify the matter, there are probably three different approaches. Approach number one is lowest price product, which basically applies to commodity prices. So in order to be competitive in that area, in order to be profitable in that area, you have to basically be the lowest cost producer of a commodity type product, which is certainly like the grains, oil, various things of that nature. So being a low price producer gives you a chance to be the lowest price and therefore get market share because your price is cheapest of a product that is probably equal to any other product in that same class. Another strategy at the other end of the spectrum is premium product, premium price. Having the best product in an existing category is also going to require having the highest price, because you cannot be the lowest cost producer and at the same time have the best price, best product. You have to pick and choose between those two options. So having the premium product means that my product is better than anyone else in my sector or in my market, and I have a price that goes along with it because it's what it takes to produce that premium product. And so our interview coming up with Leah and various other people we've talked to over time is an example of how a small business can compete with a box company based upon having the best product. You're never going to find premium product, premium price in a box store. I mean, they simply don't understand it. They can't produce at that level. The medium strategy between the two is best value. And that's a combination of the two where we're not the cheapest, but we're not the most expensive. We don't have the best product. We don't have the least quality product, but we have some kind of a value trade-off in between. And inside a business, you can have a variety of situations. You can have two different lines, for example. You can have the premium line and you can have a value line. There's nothing wrong with that as a strategy, but you have to clearly demark your products as being one of the two. Otherwise, you're just, why should I pay a premium price when I can buy this other thing for something less? And the customer can't understand that difference. If you look at airlines, for example, even though it's the same product, it's a very much different delivered product. Spirit Airlines, for example, is clearly lowest price, lowest quality product. And every so often they strand all kinds of people at various locations because they discontinue flights. You could look at tools, for example, and in the tooling area, hand tools, for example, hand woodworking tools. If you're looking for the highest quality tool that does the highest quality things for a tradesman that uses this stuff every day and delivers his product at a high level, then you're looking at a product line called Fest Tools, where you're going to pay a premium price. You're going to pay $600 for a sander, but the sander works at a much different level than the common. If you're looking for medium price things, you're looking at a DeWalt or something of that nature. But consider the consumer. The consumer who's going to use a high quality product is going to pay a high quality price because he has a high quality need. But if you're a homeowner and you're drilling a hole once in a blue moon or once every so often, you don't need the highest quality service and product because you just don't have that kind of a need. So a secondary one might be best. If you're going to do a series of holes one time and you're not going to do them again, then the cheapest product might just work just fine for you.
If you're enjoying this podcast, wait till you get your hands on Doug's book, We Are Alpha Dogs, available on Amazon and wherever books, ebooks, and audiobooks are sold. Go to wearealphadogs.com for bonuses and downloads to help you and your company become legendary. And if you are especially adventurous, while you're at it, take the dog quiz and find out more about who you really are. Now, back to the oval table.
Well, we have with us today a very special guest. She is known as the Pasta Queen of Pasadena. Leah runs a business where she actually makes and dries pasta, all different shapes and forms. She is in retail. She is in wholesale. She is in the restaurant business. She has created this little gem of a business right here in the heart of Pasadena. And without any further explanation, ladies and gentlemen, this is Leah Ferranzani. Hello, Leah. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, nice to talk to you all. Thank you for having me.
Well, Leah, to begin with, why pasta?
Because it's delicious. I love pasta. I love to eat. I was the little kid who liked to walk around and take everybody's order. And not long after I had my first kid, I was a food and wine writer at the time. I worked for a company called K&L Wine Merchants as their writer and editor and did some freelancing on the side. I noticed that all my free time to make big, fresh batches of pasta had kind of dried up. These kids are a little demanding. And I was relying on my pantry a lot more. And what I found was that I couldn't find locally made, certified organic, dried pasta to buy. Everything that was of quality was imported from Italy. I have a master's in journalism that I put straight to work, only to discover that we actually export about half the Durham wheat we grow in the U.S. to Italy for them to make into pasta to sell back to us. So while ruminating on this idea, I had another kid. And one day while I was on maternity leave with her, I came downstairs and I told my husband, I think I want to start a dried pasta business. I still can't find what I want. And he said, what do you know about making and drying pasta? I said, absolutely nothing. He's like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. You should do that then. And here I am almost 7 years later.
Well, why not sauces?
Fundamentally, it's the palate that everything is served on. And if that ingredient isn't good, then it doesn't really matter how good your sauce is. It's still only going to be a mediocre dish. I live to feed people and I love to talk about food. You're in trouble if you come into my shop and I'm sitting there and not mid-email, because I will talk your ear off about food for as long as you will let me.
You've touched on it, but give us a little bit of background about where you're from and the history of pasta in this country, which is probably pretty small, pretty short.
Sure. I am originally from New York. I have been out in California for quite a long time. My family moved here when I was about 9.5. I ran around all over the place between 18 and 28. I lived in, 5 different states, and at some point moved back to New York, where, I just kept building my love of food and my connection to food and where food comes from. I think that pasta is probably the perfect fit for me, really. When I moved back to LA, I ended up managing Pizzeria Mozza, kind of on a whim, and really just taking to heart all of the education and mentorship that working for somebody like Nancy Silverton can provide. I think it's really fascinating. We actually have a history of pasta production in the US, but like many things that we used to do and probably used to do well, big industry took over, tried to do it faster and cheaper, and forgot that flavor and nutrition and joy and comfort and all of those things are really what make food good. And so pasta became a commodity like so many other things. And I think we lost a connection to what pasta could taste like. There were at least 3, if not 4, family owned pasta factories in Los Angeles. And funny enough, I met the son of the last family-owned pasta company in Los Angeles when I started my business. He had seen my Kickstarter video and he came by and we talked pasta dryers, we talked wheat, we talked all sorts of fun things. And he gave me probably one of the most solid pieces of advice that I got when I was starting my business. And it was based on some very personal experience, which was build a brand. Because most of those pasta factories that I'm talking about, they were co-packers. They made pasta for other people. And eventually all those other people nickeled and dimed them out of business, whether it was importing pasta from Italy that was subsidized by all of the agricultural and labor subsidies that they have in that country. Other places overseas that could just make it cheaper, or even in the States that could just make it cheaper, again, by focusing on speed, cheaper quality ingredients, cutting the semolina with Durham flour or other finer grinds, which all degrade the quality of the pasta. So he said, build a brand and focus there.
So who are the big players in pasta, names that we all recognize, and how much pasta do you assume that they make per year relative to how much pasta you make per year in your craft business?
The big players, the people who really make commodity pasta are, Barilla and DiCecco and Ronzoni. I talked to a guy from Barilla a few years ago when I was at the Fancy Food Show, and he told me that they made 10,000 pounds of pasta an hour at their factory, and I made 80,000 pounds of pasta last year. So I made a day's worth of pasta at Barilla in my most successful year to date. So if it gives you a frame of scale, they make millions upon millions of pounds of pasta. And I think 80,000 pounds is a lot of pasta for a couple of people.
That's extraordinary, really. All right. So how does your pasta how is it set apart from commodity pasta?
That's a great question. I think the main things that are all about time, temperature, and quality. So the first thing that we do is that we extrude all of our pastas through bronze dies instead of Teflon coated dies. So if you think of a giant Play-Doh Fun Factory, the disc that you push the pasta through is made out of metal rather than plastic. And that gives a really rough, porous texture to the surface of the pasta so that you end up with something that soaks up sauce rather than something where the sauce slides off into a sad little puddle in the bottom of your bowl. Then we only use 100% Durham Semolina. So Durham is a really special variety of wheat. It is an ancient wheat that has a very high amount of protein, and it has a very unique gluten structure where it develops a lot of gluten, but that gluten is not very elastic. It doesn't stretch very well, but it is very plastic, which means it holds shape really well. And so by using 100% Durham Semolina, the semolina referring to the grind where all of the bran and all of the germ are removed, and the granulation of the quote unquote flour is very coarse, almost like fine cornmeal instead of something powdery. And that creates a very firm, toothy pasta that's able to hold its shape well. And then we dry everything very slowly and at low temperatures. And if you think about what happens if you stick grain in the toaster oven, you change the volatile organic compounds, you toast it, right? Like you make all those things change and you really destroy all of the flavors. So we dry everything at 100 degrees or so or less for as long as we possibly can. Most of our pastas take about 20 hours to dry a single batch. And that preserves all the natural flavor in the wheat because we're not cooking them off. For comparison, commodity pasta tends to be dried at 185 degrees. So you can imagine the transformation of all of those volatile organic compounds. If there's anything left and they're not just transformed, it's not going to taste the same. You're not going to get that lovely, weedy, nutty quality out of the wheat. Those are the real things that I do differently. I make the pasta in very small batches. So even in that 80,000 pounds of pasta that we made last year, it was in batches of 250 pounds at a time. And so we are adjusting on a micro level to every single batch of flour, really every single bag of flour. We're responding to the day. I have a giant humidifier in my kitchen so that I am always creating an environment that's somewhat like the Bay of Naples, which means that all of my employees work like it's a hot yoga studio. So it's like 90 degrees and 60 to 70% humidity in there. All of those factors go and build into a product that is delicious. You know, scientifically, I think I've seen papers that say it is more nutritious. You know, I don't make those claims on my packaging, but we are not destroying all of the vitamins by blasting everything with heat. And we just take our time. There are real people making your food, even if we are using machines. And that means that we're getting the opportunity to, you know, imbue that food with love and passion and care. You know, one of the values of the company and one of the things that we talk about as a business is that we come into work every day and we make food for people. That brings comfort and joy and connection. While we're in the business of making pasta, really my business is making connection, right? It's bringing people together over something delicious. We should all take pride in that. That's our privilege in life, to get to serve our community in such just a profound way. And nothing drove that home more for me than COVID.
I recall at the beginning of the lockdowns, one of the first items that was obliterated at every grocery store was pasta. Gone. All the pizzas were gone and all the pasta was gone.
Everybody who was maybe gluten intolerant forgot about that. And they went back to eating pasta for my benefit. I really appreciate that.
I'd like to focus on two things. What you just said was comfort, joy, connection, and bringing people together to serve the community in a profound way. Isn't that an interesting way of expressing your devotion to the customer and the underlying thread behind the business? That every day we come in to do exactly that, bring comfort and joy to people. I doubt if you go to a big box store, you're going to get that.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, there are packages full of nothing everywhere. But if I'm gonna put my heart and soul and time and energy into building a business, I want it to be of service. I want it to offer more.
The expression that you make relative to the process and to the employees and feeding people is just mesmerizing. It's great content. It's like you've been thinking about it for a long time.
It's who I am, fundamentally. You know, my love language is service, acts of service, and really running this business is my act of service. To just try and do things differently and better.
I mean, we have a list of 7 criteria that we think is really important, and one of them is being involved in the community. Wherever your community is, you are there also, and we think that's extremely important. And it's usually in the form of service. It's not in the form of trying to sell people something. It's in the form of service to them. One thing I'd like to do is talk about strategy for a second, because the strategy that I think you're using would be applicable to a lot of other small businesses in order to compete with the big box stores. And I think your strategy is a premium product, premium price, as opposed to just commodity pricing. So you're going to sit there and you're going to make a great product, and you're going to charge an appropriate price for that product. And then you're going to go out and find those customers that want that item. And you're hoping not to run out of them along the way, but you're probably not going to.
I think the thing that I had to decide when I set out to build this business, understanding what my cost of goods were, how much my labor was going to be. I am a manufacturing company in the heart of Los Angeles. I alluded earlier that I don't have government subsidies like Italian pasta manufacturers do. So I pay for the true cost of my ingredients. I pay for the true cost of my labor. My overhead is higher than if I was working in someplace in the Midwest where real estate isn't at the same premium as it is here. But that ultimately, I function in a world that I believe that there are enough people that care about good food to sustain my business, and that I just need to be big enough. I need to be big enough to, make a living for myself and a living for the people who work with me, and big enough that I can continue to, contribute to the community and support those endeavors, but that I don't have to be everything to everyone. And I don't need to sacrifice the values that I have as both a business owner and a manufacturer to always be trying to provide something for less. Fundamentally, the people who are shopping with me, whether it's in a store or in my shop, we're on e-commerce, their values and their care for the food that they're feeding themselves and their family is more important than the price point. And so if that means that they only eat pasta once a month so that it's affordable for them to eat the best pasta, then that's what they do.
Where can our listeners find your product?
So my pastas are available at the Whole Foods in Southern California, Bristol Farms, Jimbo's, Lassen's, Clark's, Mother's, Erewhon Markets, little gourmet markets and cheese shops on our website, www.semolinapasta.com. We have a whole map of all of the retailers we have. We've got some of the great independent markets in Northern California, Rainbow Grocery and Canyon Market and Palace Market, and of course Byrite. And, we are constantly looking for great partners that really care about what it is we do, and growing at a nice and healthy clip so that we can keep a wrangle on things, so that we're always focused on our commitment to quality first and foremost, and not our speed of growth.
Can people order online?
Yes, they can always order direct from me at semolinapasta.com. We send out shipments daily. You can also order from our really great selection of provisions. I've kind of curated a best of all my favorite things: Bianco de Napoli tomatoes, Jacobson finishing salt, fennel pollen, fun, hard to find things. I usually have salt-packed anchovies because you can never find those anywhere. So you can order all of those things in addition to my pasta.
One other thing that I would be interested in is where the future goes, in the sense that in every line of business, innovation happens. If you're able to grow some, on a controlled basis, then you have more money to be innovative with. You also have more money to reward employees with, and you have more ability to become more solid in the long run. Have you given any thought to any of those issues?
The funny thing is, within the pasta world, my innovation is going like older and older school. The pasta industry in and of itself has been innovating and tweaking and refining and finding ways to go faster, cheaper, quote unquote better for the last 50 years. And there's a reason why I'm in business, because that made some really lousy pasta. So I'm actually hearkening back to a much older era where I'm putting the flavor and the texture of the pasta at the forefront. I have been thinking about things that we can offer in the future that differentiate us from our competitors. We are actually about to launch an upcycled pasta. We're working with a company called Regrained that recovers spent brewing grains from California breweries, and they mill it into a really cool flour. And we're using that as an inclusion in a new pasta that we are going to make our first commercial batch of next week. And that will have 3 times the fiber of our normal pasta, this beautiful cocoa color, and like a really nutty, malty flavor. But I made sure that as we were developing that product, that we were always making sure that flavor and texture were still the most important factors, and that we could make something that delivered on those things. 3 times fiber is a bonus, but it's not my goal. I'm not trying to claim I make health food over here. I make pasta and it's good. You know,
It sounds like the industry you're in is running as fast as they can away from you.
I'm running away from them, I think is more like it. There are a handful of us. When I started out, there were maybe 5 artisan pasta companies in the country. A couple of them have gone out. A couple of new ones have popped up. It's a very small group of us who are committed to the old school methods of making and drying pasta. I personally think that there are a plethora of really great pasta shapes that already exist in the world and that are hard to make and need even more specialized equipment than I already have. And I'm saving my pennies so that I can buy those machines to make those things that are harder to find. Because I'm a food nerd and I care about having the perfect orecchietti for your plate. It doesn't have to be novel. It has to be good.
And what is the most popular pastas that you sell?
Our 2 most popular shapes are strozzapreti, which is kind of a scroll-like shape, and rigatoni. We do fun things that a lot of other competitors don't do. We do Ditalini, which in California is incredibly hard to find. It's a tiny little tube. It's the Italian translation is a thimble, but it's actually, excuse me, hiccup, smaller than a thimble, and it's perfect for pasta fagioli and pasta and lenticchie because it just stays on your spoon, and you don't have these like cumbersome, like gigantic noodles falling off your spoon.
One thing that's a little different about your establishment is there is a spirit and an energy in your store and kitchen that you don't see a lot in a small business. And I was just wondering, how do you keep it exciting and special for your employees day in and day out?
One of our values is that kitchen dance parties are highly encouraged. So we always play fun music and everybody dances around and acts a little silly. And then, one of the things about a small manufacturing business is that it is inevitable at least once a week that something will break or go wrong. And so it keeps everybody on their toes. It's never a dull moment. We're a small team. Right now, there are 4 of us. I'm looking for one more person to join the team to help us pack pasta. But, when you have that small of a team, I think it's really easy to keep everybody very connected. A big part of that for me is figuring out how to create what the quote unquote company culture is, even in my interviews, that get me the kind of people that are going to fit with that culture. I ask you how you like to get feedback. I ask you, how you handle things when you're outside your comfort zone. I ask what you do when something breaks, all those kinds of things, because I need people who are adaptive and ingenious. I don't need a bunch of sheep. I need people who can come in and use their brains and think and like help me see new ways to do the thing. And so it's really collaborative, and I think that helps keep it fun. And I hope that it helps the people who work for me feel appreciated and that their input is valued, and that they're building something not just that is feeding all. One of my main pasta makers just was a line cook for the last 15 years. a couple of weeks ago, he said, I cooked for 15 years in restaurants. And I think in the 4 months that I have made pasta for you, I have fed more people than I did in 15 years of cooking. And I love that.
I know you didn't come into this business knowing everything there is to know about business or about pasta. How did you get through that? Did you have any mentors?
I did. I had a number of mentors. The most impactful one, I will have to say, is a wonderful woman named Christine Moore, who owns Little Flower Candy Company. Being able to have somebody who was able to see through the same lens that I was really just so important and so validating. And I've worked hard since then to make sure that I'm a resource for any particularly young women who are coming up in the food business, who have questions and who are trying to figure out how to balance it all, and make choices that reflect all of their values in their lives. And I don't think I'd be in the same place without her.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, our guest, Leah Ferranzani. The company is Semolina Artisanal Pasta, and please do visit her website at semolinapasta.com and treat yourself to some of the best pasta you're ever gonna have.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, what a great conversation. Alpha Dogs are always the first in line for the good stuff, so remember to download your favorite episodes at theovaltable.com. Stay up to date by subscribing and review us on Apple Podcasts to let other top dogs know how much you enjoy these conversations. Now, let's go back to the Oval Table to hear what impressed the guys from the interview.
Our interview with Leah was fascinating, almost a quote a minute, how she expressed things and the nature of her business. So we want to get into that in a little bit more detail. But before we do that, we want to be sure that we are clear as to who we are talking to. This podcast is designed to talk to managers and owners of closely held businesses who are involved in those businesses and trying to make those businesses bigger. We're also talking to the people who work inside those businesses because we want to help you become more successful also. And the third group of people we're talking to are those who are lost and tied up in large companies, yearning to be free, yearning to have a chance to do something special in their life. And as around the table here, we are not just advocates of something, but we actually do what we advocate doing. And Vaughn, you've been gone, 19 years from big companies?
Yes, that's correct, Doug. Yeah, I left my last corporate job.
And Carl, how about you?
It's been 12 years for me, Doug.
Unlike both of you, when early in my career, I had a chance to be in two corporations, and day one, I figured out that no, that's not the right place for me. So I couldn't get out fast enough. And in fact, I had a long-term consulting engagement a couple of years back. And Vaughn, you came over and toured the place. And then we went to lunch. And you said, when are you going to stop babysitting those people? Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we're speaking to you. If you're one of those people caught in that situation, we're speaking to you. And we're doing it because we think at this moment in history, in our country's history, is especially important that small to medium business, the closely held business, they're the same thing, become successful. Over half of the workers in the country work in small business. If you think about some of the big innovations that have happened, they've come from small business. The Tesla cars were a small idea at one time, which became a big idea. Steve Jobs and Wozniak were in a neighborhood where they could go over to Bill Hewlett's garage and bum some parts. And so they weren't big either when they started. And Google, they were students at Stanford. They rode their bikes over to the meeting where they were going to get funding. Facebook was just a little quasi dating app. And Hotmail was the same thing. Two guys saying, I wonder what would happen if we did this. And so from small business oftentimes comes great innovation and great society change. So in our country, there have been several periods that have been extremely important. 1740, 1750 to the Revolution was one of those times. 1850 to about 1890 was another one. Pre-World War II, during World War II, and just post-World War II was another one. The 90s, late 80s and early 90s was another one. And we think right now is the next one. It's extremely important that you step up with your business and make your business successful. We need you to be successful not only from an economic standpoint, but also from a society culture standpoint. You need to step up. You need to make those businesses successful, and you need to bring everybody in your business along with you, customers, vendors, and employees, and the community itself. Bring them along because we need you doing that at this point in time. Please do not step back and be passive. So now what we'd like to do is go into our analysis of Semolina artisan pasta and discuss how our 7 criteria overlay on her business. The 7th criteria is honesty and integrity in all things. And that is clearly what Leah has talked about. She's talked about doing it, being honest with her employees, being honest with her product, making sure her product is more like old product than new product, and the vitamins are in the product and the value of the product is there. Critical factor number 6 is being involved in your community in which you live, whether your community is spread out throughout the country and in different groups of activities, or whether it's being involved in your local town area. She's out there giving pasta away and making pasta valuable to people in the community in which she lives. She is so valuable that QuickBooks gave her $10,000 to do that. The next item up from the bottom is having an operating partnership with your vendors. She's clearly talking to her vendors. She's talking to the people in the artisan space, and she's talking to other women who have been successful in operating a closely held business, and she's getting that advice from people in that form in terms of her vendors. She's also very clear about wanting to be sure that her employees are rewarded. She wants to have a decent wage. She wants them to have a fun working environment and wants to make the most. One of the people there said, I was a line cook for 15 years, but I've cooked for more meals in the couple of years I've been here than I did all the time I was a line cook. When employees spontaneously come up with things, it is amazing how valuable those comments can be. The third thing that we focus in on is innovation. You have innovation in product, in process, or a combination of the two. Process is fairly easy because it's just a matter of looking at what you're doing step by step. But product is much more difficult. And here we have an example of how in an old product, centuries old product, Leah has gone out and found a different form of flour spent from breweries, and she is going to take that and make that into a product. Will it be successful? We don't really know, but it sounds fascinating to give it a try. So that's innovating in product. She also innovates in process to make sure that everything is going as smoothly as it can at her scale. Her scale is much different than a large company, but at her scale, she's focusing on process and product improvement. The last 2 criteria, number 1 being true profits. We don't have that data, but we can infer that data because she's making the kind of livable wage she feels worth her effort, worth her time. So that means she's making a true profit of some kind. She's also being extremely careful at expanding the business so that she's not just borrowing lots of money or bringing in investors and trying to really put the gas on something, but she's trying to be slow and careful and doing it with longevity in mind. So that's what that's the true profit focus. But the question is, are we moving fast enough here? The second thing and the last thing we're going to talk about is higher sales with ever increasing margins. Bringing on the new product helps to foster that. Not being overly committed in debt gives you the capacity to try and do that. She is somewhat limited by her scale at this point, but that scale could be increased. It could be expanded if she chose to do that. What do you guys think?
If she was to expand into like different kind of areas, I was going to say lines, but that's not really the right word. She's a multi-talented individual. She has a journalism degree. She's a good writer, obviously. She's got a great personality and a gift of gab, and she's passionate, and it's obvious. My advice to her would be that she start doing a cooking show on YouTube or something where she has an opportunity to showcase her product, but also showcase her personality and showcase her recipes.
I mean, one thing you're illustrating there, Vaughn, is building a mystique where it's a focus on her, and it's her pasta. It's not just anybody's pasta. It's her pasta. If you look at some of the people in the restaurant space, Emma Agassi for one, Wolfgang Puck for another, Nancy Silverton for a third, they built mystiques around the product. It was around their mystique. And so that helps to sell the product. It helps to build the business, and also helps to make it much harder for competition to come into the marketplace. What do you think, Carl?
I would agree totally with that. And first of all, thank you for that webinar on how to run a business. That is free of charge, folks. You got the whole thing there. Now, as far as Leah is concerned, I am with you guys. I don't understand why I'm not seeing her on GMA and the Today Show and Ellen and any number of shows on television. She's got what it takes to do that, and she could easily be building her brand with that. Now, I will say that she did mention that she is going to increase her production capacity by 50% in the not too distant future, which will expand her workforce by 50%. So she's thinking that way. She's going down that line. And well, what can I say? I think she's knocking it out of the park, and more power to her. I'd just love to see her get out there, get her face, get her voice, get her mystique, as you say, Doug. Get it out there to people.
I mean, around this table, we're not excited about going out and borrowing large sums of money to expand the business. We're much more seat of the pants operation. We think it's a lot safer for a small business. But the typical person running a business knows a great deal about some small thing, but that's all they can do is that small thing. Leah, on the other hand, not only can do that, but she has the personality, she has the journalism goods to really make a splash. And she probably deserves to be that way. Because when you talk to her about how are you innovating, I'm innovating older, not newer. I'm not trying to be fancier. I'm trying to be better with the product. And the product is ruling what our expansion plans are, because we're focused on the quality of the product and the people we serve. That's exactly what we think you should be doing if you're running that business. So if you're running one of these small businesses, it is time to step up. It is time to do something important. It is time to make these businesses happen. And if you would like some question answered, or you'd like some help, or you'd like some motivation, give us a call, because we're happy to help you. We're not here because we have nothing else to do. We're here because we're trying to make this happen for you. So if you're one of those, you're an employee in a business, or you own the business, or you're a refugee in waiting in a public company, give us a call, and we'll be happy to help you with some suggestions.
No podcast like ours would be possible without the help of some talented people behind the scenes. We would like to thank Audavita Studios and their director of podcast production, Sean Hettinger, recording engineer David Rosenblad, staging and show production David Wolf, social media Jay Spang, artist Marcia Carrington, and for our transcriber, Jamie Karras. We all hope you have a productive and inspirational week. I'm Rishi Katz, and we will see you next time here at the Oval Table.